The morning air in Chicago carried the smell of roasted coffee beans and fresh bread as Emily rushed to her shift at the small corner diner. Her hair was tied in a messy bun, her uniform slightly wrinkled, and her old sneakers squeaked on the floor as she hurried inside. She was already late, and her manager's sharp glare didn't help. "Emily, you can't keep coming in late," the manager snapped. "I'm sorry, traffic was. Save it. Just get to work." Emily sighed, tying her apron. She tried to shake off the exhaustion from her double shift the night before. Another long day, she thought, plastering on the smile customers expected. The bell above the door jingled. Emily glanced up, and froze. There he was. Daniel Reed. The same man whose car she had mistakenly entered the night before. His presence in the small, greasy diner was like a diamond in a box of pebbles. He wore a tailored gray suit that hugged his tall frame perfectly, and the faint shine of his watch alone looked like it could pay Emily's rent for a year. Emily's heart raced. What is he doing here? Her co-worker whispered in awe, "Who's that? He looks like he owns half the city." Emily whispered back, "Trust me, he just might." Daniel scanned the room until his eyes landed on her. A small, knowing smile touched his lips. He walked to the corner booth and sat down. Emily hesitated, clutching her notepad. She tried to act casual, but her steps faltered as she approached. "You, again," she muttered, her cheeks burning. Daniel leaned back, clearly amused. "Good morning, Emily. Do you serve coffee here?" Her jaw nearly dropped. Did he really just come here for coffee? "Yes," she said quickly, fumbling with her pen. "Of course. Black. Cream. Sugar." He studied her face for a moment before answering. "Black. Strong." As Emily poured his coffee, her hands trembled slightly. Daniel noticed but said nothing. Instead, he broke the silence. "Do you always work this hard?" Emily blinked, surprised by the question. "I have to. Bills don't pay themselves." Daniel's gaze softened, but before he could respond, her manager barked across the room, "Emily! Don't keep the gentleman waiting." Emily flushed with embarrassment. She set the cup on the table quickly. "Sorry about that. Enjoy your coffee." She turned to leave, but Daniel's voice stopped her. "Emily." She looked back. His eyes were steady, curious. "I was hoping I'd run into you again." Her heart skipped. "Why?" she whispered. Instead of answering, Daniel pulled out a sleek silver card and placed it on the table. "Call me if you ever need anything." Emily stared at the business card, her throat dry. The golden letters spelled out his name and company. She knew who he was now. Daniel Reed, the CEO whose face appeared in magazines, the man whispered about in financial news. She swallowed hard. "Why would someone like you give this to someone like me?" Daniel gave her a small, enigmatic smile. "Because sometimes, the most unexpected people leave the biggest impact." Emily's chest tightened. She didn't know what he meant, but before she could ask, another customer called for her. By the time she turned back, Daniel was gone, leaving behind only the faint scent of his cologne and the gleam of his card on the table. She picked it up with trembling fingers. Her mind raced. What does he really want from me? Why me, of all people? She slipped the card into her apron pocket, her heart pounding faster than it had in years. For days, Emily carried Daniel's silver business card in her pocket like it was burning a hole through her apron. She pulled it out during breaks, tracing the embossed letters with her fingertips, whispering his name under her breath. Daniel Reed, CEO. Every time she thought about calling, her stomach twisted. Why would a man like him want to hear from her again? She was just a poor waitress with overdue bills and second-hand shoes. He was him. But life had a way of pushing Emily into corners. It was late one evening when her landlord knocked harshly on her door. "Emily, rent's overdue again. You've got 3 days, or you're out." Her chest tightened. "Please, Mr. Johnson, I just need more time. My tips haven't been good this month." He sighed. 3 days, Emily. No more. When the door closed, silence fell over her small apartment. The cracked walls seemed to close in, and her empty fridge only reminded her of how alone she was. She sank onto the bed, clutching the card. Her fingers shook as she dialed the number. Each ring pounded in her ears. He won't answer. Why would he? Hello. Emily's breath caught. His voice was smooth, deep, calm, just as she remembered. Hi. This is Emily. From the diner. From that night in your car. There was a pause, then a warm chuckle. I was hoping you'd call. Her cheeks flushed though no one could see. I wasn't sure if I should. Emily, Daniel said gently. If I didn't want you to, I wouldn't have given you my number. She bit her lip, the words spilling out before she could stop them. I didn't know who else to call. Daniel's tone shifted, concern lacing his words. Are you okay? Emily hesitated, fighting the urge to cry. I will be. I'm just having a rough time. There was silence for a beat. Then Daniel said firmly, meet me tomorrow. My office. Noon. Her heart skipped. Your office? I don't think I belong in a place like that. You belong wherever you want to be, Daniel replied. I'll be waiting. The next day, Emily stood in front of the towering glass skyscraper downtown. The building was so tall, it seemed to scrape the clouds. She felt small, tiny, in her thrift store dress and worn shoes. Businessmen in suits rushed past her, women in heels clicked confidently across the marble floors, and there she was, clutching her purse like a lifeline. Do I really belong here? She whispered to herself. She almost turned back, but then the memory of Daniel's voice steadied her. Upstairs, Daniel's office was unlike anything she'd ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, and sleek furniture filled the vast space. Emily felt like she'd stepped into another world. Daniel rose from behind his desk, smiling softly. You came. She nodded nervously. I almost didn't. Why not? Because this isn't my world. I'm not like you, Daniel. He walked closer, his gaze steady, kind. Emily, I didn't ask you here because of who you're not. I asked you here because of who you are. Her throat tightened. No one had ever said something like that to her before. She whispered, Why me? Daniel's eyes darkened slightly. Because sometimes, the wrong road leads to the right people. Emily's chest ached, her heart thudding against her ribs. For the first time in years, she felt like someone was looking at her. Not with pity, not with judgment, but with something else. Something she didn't dare name. Just then, Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his jaw tightening before he silenced it. Emily tilted her head. Important call? Daniel forced a small smile. Nothing more important than this conversation. But she noticed it, the shadow in his eyes, the heaviness in his tone. Before she could ask, Daniel stepped back slightly. Emily, if you ever feel like the world is against you, just know I'm on your side. Her breath caught. She didn't know if he meant it as a friend, or something more. But either way, her heart whispered something her mind refused to admit. He sees me. As Emily left the skyscraper, clutching her purse, she turned back to glance at the windows above. Somewhere in there, Daniel Reed, the man everyone admired but no one really knew, was watching her walk away. And deep down, he knew this wasn't the last time they'd meet. The diner was unusually quiet that evening. Only a handful of customers lingered, sipping coffee while rain tapped gently on the windows. Emily wiped down a table, trying to shake off the nerves that had been building since her visit to Daniel's office. Her co-workers teased her all day. So, Miss Emily, who's the mysterious suit that keeps showing up? One of them whispered with a grin. Emily blushed. He's just a customer. Aha, her friend smirked. A customer who looks at you like you're the only person in the room. Emily rolled her eyes, but her heart betrayed her, racing at the memory of his gaze. The bell above the door jingled, and her breath caught. It was him. Daniel Reed. Tall, composed, a faint glimmer of rain on his black coat. He carried an aura that made the entire diner fall silent. Emily approached, trying to sound casual. You again? You must really like our coffee. Daniel smiled softly. Maybe it's not the coffee I come for. Her cheeks heated. She quickly scribbled on her notepad. Black coffee, right? He nodded, studying her carefully. Emily, do you always hide behind small talk? She blinked, flustered. I'm not hiding. Daniel leaned forward slightly. His eyes, deep, unreadable, held hers in a way that made her forget where she was. For a brief moment, it felt like the world outside had melted away, leaving only the two of them. Finally, Emily placed the coffee before him. Her hand brushed the table, and he noticed the faint tremor. Emily, Daniel said gently, why do you look so afraid of being seen? Her throat tightened. Because when people really see me, they leave. Daniel's expression shifted. Something pained flickered across his face. He looked away, his jaw tightening as if he was reliving a memory. Emily hesitated, then asked softly, what about you? You always look like you're carrying something heavy. Like you're here, but part of you is somewhere else. Daniel exhaled slowly, running a hand through his dark hair. For a moment, he didn't answer. Then, in a low voice, he said, because I am. Emily leaned in. What do you mean? His eyes darkened, and he looked down at the coffee as if searching for answers there. You remind me of someone. Someone I lost. Emily's breath caught. She didn't dare speak, afraid the moment would shatter if she pushed too hard. Daniel's phone buzzed suddenly, the sharp sound breaking the fragile silence. He glanced at the screen, and his expression hardened instantly. I have to go, he said, his voice colder than before. Emily frowned. Daniel, wait. But he was already slipping into his coat, his movements brisk. He paused at the door, turning back just for a second. His eyes softened, as if he wanted to say something more. But instead, he whispered, almost too quietly to hear. Be careful who you trust, Emily. And then he was gone, leaving only the fading echo of the bell above the door and the storm of questions swirling in Emily's heart. She sank into a chair, staring at the empty booth. Who did I remind him of? Who did he lose? Outside, Daniel's black Mercedes disappeared into the rain-soaked streets. Alone in his car, he gripped the steering wheel tightly, his mind replaying memories he had tried to bury for years. The rain had stopped by the time Emily walked home, but her mind was storming with questions. Daniel's words repeated in her head over and over. Be careful who you trust, Emily. Why would he say that? What danger could possibly touch her, a poor waitress who barely made enough to survive? She pulled her thin jacket tighter around herself and glanced behind her. The streets were almost empty, but for a moment she swore she saw a dark car parked at the corner, its headlights off. She shook her head, forcing herself to keep walking. I'm just being paranoid. The next morning at the diner, Emily tried to focus on work, but her mind wouldn't settle. Every time the bell above the door jingled, she looked up, half expecting Daniel to appear again. Instead, someone else walked in. A woman. Tall, striking, with long black hair that flowed over her shoulders and sharp eyes that seemed to scan the room in seconds. She wore a dark trench coat and moved with the confidence of someone used to control. Emily straightened, clutching her notepad. Table for one? The woman gave a faint smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. Coffee. Black. Emily nodded, hurrying to pour. But as she set the cup down, the woman leaned in slightly, her voice low. You're Emily, aren't you? Emily froze. Yes. Do I know you? The woman studied her, almost like she was weighing every word. No. But I know Daniel. Emily's chest tightened. You know Mr. Reed? The woman smirked. Mr. Reed. That's what you call him? Interesting. Emily frowned, confused. Why do you care? The woman's eyes narrowed. Because Daniel Reed isn't who you think he is. And you'd be wise to stay away. Emily's pulse quickened. What do you mean? But the woman only sipped her coffee, her lipstick leaving a faint red mark on the rim. Then she placed a bill on the table and stood. Some advice, Emily. People who get too close to Daniel usually end up regretting it. Emily's voice shook. Why are you telling me this? The woman leaned closer, whispering just loud enough for Emily to hear. Because you remind him of her. And that is dangerous. Before Emily could respond, the woman turned sharply and left, her heels clicking against the floor. The bell jingled above the door, and then she was gone. Emily stood frozen, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. Remind him of her? Who is she talking about? The rest of her shift blurred. She spilled coffee on a customer, forgot an order, and dropped her tray twice. Her manager scolded her, but Emily barely heard a word. All she could think about was Daniel, and the mysterious woman's warning. That evening, as Emily walked home, she saw it again. A car. Parked at the corner. Headlights off. She quickened her steps, her hands trembling. When she turned onto her street, the car slowly rolled forward before disappearing into the night. Emily fumbled for her keys, rushing inside her small apartment. She locked the door, her chest heaving as she pressed her back against it. Her phone buzzed. She glanced down, her breath catching when she saw the name. Daniel. She hesitated, then answered with a shaky voice. Hello, Emily. His voice was steady, but there was an edge to it. Did anyone talk to you today? Emily's throat went dry. Why would you ask me that? There was a long pause on the other end, then Daniel spoke, his tone low and urgent. Because if she did, you need to stay away from her. She's dangerous. Emily's eyes widened. Who is she, Daniel? What's going on? But Daniel didn't answer her question. Instead, he whispered, almost like a vow. Trust me, Emily. Whatever happens, don't believe a word she says. And then the line went dead. Emily sank onto her bed, her heart racing faster than ever. She stared at her phone, torn between fear and curiosity. Emily hardly slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Daniel's face, his steady gaze, his soft smile, and then she saw the woman's sharp eyes and heard her chilling words. You remind him of her. And that is dangerous. The words clung to her like a shadow. By morning, Emily's hands shook as she brewed her cheap coffee. The phone sat on the counter, silent, but she couldn't stop staring at it. Should she call Daniel? Should she demand answers? Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. She froze. No one visited her. Not this early. Slowly, she approached, peeking through the crack. Relief washed over her. It was Lily, her neighbor and only real friend. Emily. Lily burst in, carrying a bag of groceries. You forgot to eat again yesterday, didn't you? I swear, if I don't check on you, you'll survive on diner leftovers. Emily smiled faintly. You know me too well. But Lily's sharp eyes quickly narrowed. What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. Emily hesitated. She trusted Lily, but how could she explain that a millionaire CEO had somehow stepped into her life? That a strange woman had warned her to stay away? Finally, Emily whispered, Lily, have you ever met someone who feels like they see you, but also like they're hiding something from you? Lily raised an eyebrow. That sounds suspicious. Who are we talking about? Emily bit her lip. Just someone. Someone I can't figure out. Lily sighed, setting the groceries down. Emily, you've always had this big heart. But sometimes people take advantage of that. You've got to be careful who you let in. The warning stung, reminding Emily of Daniel's own words. Be careful who you trust. Later that day, Emily worked her shift at the diner, but her eyes kept darting to the door. When Daniel finally walked in, her chest tightened. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept either. His usual confidence seemed thinner, cracked at the edges. "Emily," he said softly, sliding into his usual booth. She brought his coffee but couldn't hold back anymore. "Daniel, who was that woman?" His jaw clenched. "She found you." Emily leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Yes. She came here. She warned me about you. Said I remind you of someone." Daniel's eyes darkened, a storm brewing in them. For a moment, Emily thought he might get up and leave again. Instead, he ran a hand over his face and sighed. "She shouldn't have approached you." Emily's voice trembled. So she was telling the truth? Who was she talking about? "Who do I remind you of?" Daniel's gaze locked on hers, pained and unflinching. "Someone I lost. Someone I'll never get back." Emily's heart twisted. "Was she someone you loved?" Daniel hesitated. His silence said more than words could. Finally, he whispered, "Yes." The weight of the word hung heavy between them. Emily wanted to reach out, to comfort him, but fear held her back. "Then why me?" she whispered. "Why are you even here, Daniel? Why give me your number? Why keep showing up, if I just remind you of someone else?" Daniel's voice lowered, thick with emotion. "Because when you walked into my car that night, I felt something I thought I'd buried forever. And I can't ignore it." Her chest ached, caught between warmth and fear. She wanted to believe him, to trust the softness in his tone. But the stranger's warning echoed in her mind. Before she could respond, the diner door swung open. A tall man in a dark suit entered, scanning the room until his eyes landed on Daniel. "Mr. Reed," the man said firmly. "We need to leave. Now." Daniel's jaw tightened. He stood, his gaze lingering on Emily. "Stay away from her," he told the man sharply. Emily's stomach dropped. "Daniel, what's going on?" He gave her one last look, his eyes full of unspoken words. Then he left with the suited man, the bell above the door jingling like a cruel reminder that her questions were still unanswered. Emily stood frozen, clutching her tray, her mind spinning. The night after Daniel left with the suited man, Emily tossed and turned in her bed. Sleep refused to come. Every creak of the old apartment made her flinch, every shadow on the wall made her think of that dark car she had seen following her before. Her mind wouldn't stop replaying their last conversation. "Because when you walked into my car that night, I felt something I thought I'd buried forever." She whispered into the silence. "What did you mean, Daniel?" By morning, exhaustion weighed heavy in her bones. She dragged herself to work, but the diner felt emptier without him. She half hoped, half feared he would walk in again, but his booth remained vacant. During her break, Emily sat in the small employee lounge, sipping water. That's when her coworker, Jamie, flopped into the chair beside her, scrolling on his phone. "Hey, Emily," Jamie said casually. "Isn't this the guy who's been coming around?" Emily frowned. "What do you mean?" Jamie turned the screen toward her. It was a news article. The headline read, "Daniel Reed spotted in heated argument with mysterious woman outside charity gala." Emily's heart lurched. She snatched the phone, scanning the photo. It was Daniel, his jaw tense, his hand raised in frustration. And standing opposite him was the same woman who had come into the diner. The article went on to describe rumors of Daniel Reed's past, the sudden death of his fiancée 2 years ago, the scandal that followed, and whispers that he had never been the same since. Emily's chest tightened. Fiancée, so that's who I remind him of. But why hadn't he told her that? Why hide it behind half-truths and silence? When her shift ended, Emily couldn't stop herself. She found her feet carrying her toward the glass skyscraper where Daniel's office was. The lobby was bustling with employees in sharp suits, and she felt out of place in her faded jeans and old sneakers. The receptionist looked up. "Can I help you?" Emily swallowed hard. I'm here to see Mr. Reed." The woman's eyes flickered over her, clearly unimpressed. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but..." Then I'm afraid. Emily. The familiar voice cut through the noise. Emily turned. Daniel stood a few feet away, his coat slung over his arm, surprise flashing across his face. She exhaled in relief. Daniel. The receptionist straightened instantly. Mr. Reed, I was just. It's fine, Daniel interrupted, his gaze never leaving Emily. She's with me. Without another word, he gestured for Emily to follow him into the elevator. The silence inside was thick, broken only by the soft hum as they ascended. Finally, Emily spoke, her voice trembling. Why didn't you tell me about her? About your fiancé? Daniel's jaw tightened. He didn't look at her. Because some wounds aren't meant to be reopened. Emily's throat ached. But you said I reminded you of someone. Was it her? At last, Daniel turned, his eyes dark and unreadable. Yes. Her name was Claire. The name hung heavy in the air, and something inside Emily twisted painfully. Daniel continued, his voice low. She was my everything. And then she was gone. Emily wanted to reach for him, to comfort him, but before she could, the elevator doors opened. Daniel led her into his office, closing the door behind them. He walked to a drawer and pulled out a small, worn photograph. Slowly, he handed it to her. Emily's breath caught. The woman in the photo had kind eyes, a warm smile, and she looked so much like her. Her hands trembled as she whispered, She could be my sister. Daniel's gaze softened with pain. Do you understand now why I can't stay away from you? Emily's chest ached, torn between sorrow and fear. Was Daniel drawn to her for who she was, or for who she reminded him of? Before she could speak, Daniel's office phone rang sharply. He glanced at it, his expression hardening. He ignored the call. But a second later, his cell phone buzzed. He answered with a clipped tone. I told you not to contact me here. Emily's heart pounded as she watched his face pale slightly. Yes, I know she came to the diner, Daniel said into the phone, his voice rising. If you go near Emily again. He stopped, listening. His jaw clenched. Then he slammed the phone down, breathing heavily. Emily's voice shook. Daniel, what's happening? He turned to her, his eyes filled with urgency. Emily, you're in danger. And I don't know how to stop it yet. Emily left Daniel's office shaken, clutching her coat tightly around herself as she stepped into the cool evening air. The city streets buzzed with life, but somehow, she felt completely alone. You're in danger. Daniel's words echoed in her mind like a warning bell she couldn't silence. The walk back to her apartment was tense. Every sound, the squeak of a bicycle, the slam of a car door, the shuffle of footsteps behind her, felt louder than usual. She glanced over her shoulder more than once, but the crowd of strangers gave nothing away. By the time she reached her street, the lamps cast long, eerie shadows across the cracked pavement. That's when she saw it. The same black car, parked near her building. Headlights off. Her chest tightened. She forced herself to walk faster, fumbling for her keys. Her fingers shook as she unlocked the door, practically shoving herself inside. She locked it behind her, breathing hard, her back pressed against the wood. Silence. Until a knock shattered it. Emily froze. The knock came again, firmer this time. She crept to the peephole. Relief washed over her. Lily. She opened the door quickly. Lily, you scared me half to death. Her neighbor frowned. Scared you? Your face is pale. What happened? Emily hesitated, then shook her head. Nothing. Just tired. But Lily wasn't convinced. You've been jumpy for days. Talk to me. Emily wanted to tell her everything. The car, the woman, Daniel's warnings, but something inside her hesitated. She wasn't even sure she understood it herself. Instead, she forced a smile. I'll be fine. After Lily left, Emily sat on the edge of her bed, trying to calm her racing thoughts. She turned on the small lamp and pulled out the photograph Daniel had shown her. Claire. The woman who looked so much like her. Why me? Why now? Suddenly, a faint sound outside the window made her jump. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Emily's breath caught. She tiptoed toward the window, pulling the curtain just enough to peek outside. Her heart stopped. A man stood across the street, his face hidden beneath a hood. He wasn't moving. Just watching. Emily's hands shook as she pulled the curtain closed and grabbed her phone. Without thinking, she dialed Daniel. He answered on the first ring. Emily. Her voice trembled. Someone's outside. Watching me. There was silence, then Daniel's voice hardened. Don't open the door. Don't go near the windows. I'm coming. But Daniel. Emily, listen to me. He cut in firmly. Lock everything. Stay where you are. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Her legs were weak as she double-checked the locks. The sound of footsteps outside her apartment door made her gasp. She pressed her hand over her mouth to keep from crying out. The doorknob rattled. Emily stumbled backward, her heart slamming in her chest. Then, silence again. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, a sharp knock came at the door. Emily. It's me. Daniel's voice. Strong. Urgent. She hesitated, fear tightening her grip on the doorknob. How do I know it's really you? There was a pause. Then Daniel said softly, because when you walked into my car that night, you changed everything. Tears filled her eyes. She unlocked the door. Daniel stepped in quickly, his presence filling the room. His eyes scanned the apartment, his jaw clenched. Did you see his face? Emily shook her head. No. Just a hood. He was watching me. Daniel muttered something under his breath, then turned to her. His voice was softer now, but urgent. You can't stay here, Emily. Not anymore. Her breath caught. What do you mean? This is my home. Daniel's gaze was steady, filled with something that looked dangerously close to fear. Not if it puts you in their sight. Pack your things. You're coming with me. The city lights faded behind them as Daniel's black Mercedes glided along the dark, winding road. Emily sat silently in the passenger seat, clutching her small bag of hurriedly packed clothes. Her heart raced with every mile. She glanced at Daniel, his profile illuminated by the glow of the dashboard. His jaw was set, his hands steady on the wheel, but there was a tension in his shoulders she hadn't noticed before. Finally, she whispered, "Where are we going?" Daniel's eyes stayed on the road. Somewhere safe. Safe from who? She pressed. He didn't answer. Instead, he accelerated, the car eating up the distance until they reached massive iron gates flanked by stone pillars. A camera swiveled, and the gates slowly creaked open, revealing a long driveway lined with trees. Emily's eyes widened as the car pulled up to a sprawling mansion. It stood like a fortress in the night, towering windows, stone walls, and gardens that stretched out into the darkness. The sheer size of it made her small apartment feel like a dollhouse. Daniel parked and stepped out, moving quickly to open her door. Come on. Emily hesitated, staring at the grand estate. This is where you live? He gave a small nod. One of the places. Her chest tightened. One of the places? To him, this was normal. To her, it was another world. Inside, the mansion glowed with soft golden lights. High ceilings arched overhead, crystal chandeliers sparkled, and polished marble floors reflected their footsteps. Emily felt out of place immediately, tugging her worn sweater tighter. A woman appeared from the hall, an older housekeeper with silver hair pulled neatly into a bun. "Mr. Reed," she said warmly. Then her eyes flickered curiously to Emily. "Emily will be staying here," Daniel said firmly before the woman could ask. "Prepare the guest room." "Yes, sir," the housekeeper replied, disappearing up the stairs. Emily turned to Daniel, lowering her voice. "Daniel, I don't belong here." He stepped closer, his gaze softening. "You belong where you're safe. That's here." Her heart raced, but before she could respond, he gestured for her to follow. They walked through long halls lined with paintings and bookshelves until they reached a massive living room with tall windows overlooking the city below. Emily sat gingerly on the leather sofa, her fingers tracing the stitching. "This feels like a dream." Daniel poured 2 glasses of water and handed her one. "More like a nightmare you didn't choose." Emily looked up sharply. "Daniel, who was that man outside my apartment? And why do you think I'm in danger?" He leaned against the mantel, his eyes shadowed. For a moment, it looked like he might tell her everything. But then he shook his head. "It's complicated." Her frustration boiled over. "Then make it simple. You brought me here, into your world, but you won't even tell me what I'm running from." Daniel's voice dropped, low and intense. "Emily, the less you know right now, the safer you are." Her throat tightened. "Safer, or easier for you to control?" His eyes snapped to hers, hurt flickering there. "I would never control you." Silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. Finally, Daniel sighed, his shoulders softening. He walked over and gently placed the photograph of Claire, the fiancée, on the table. "I lost her because I couldn't protect her," he said quietly. "I won't make that mistake again." Emily's heart ached at the rawness in his voice. She wanted to believe him. But part of her whispered, "What if you're just a stand-in for Claire?" Before she could speak, the housekeeper returned. "The guest room is ready, Mr. Reed." Daniel nodded. "Thank you." Then to Emily softly, "Get some rest. We'll talk more tomorrow." Emily followed the housekeeper up the sweeping staircase to a lavish guest room. The bed was huge, the sheets silky beneath her hands, the windows overlooking glittering city lights far below. But instead of comfort, unease wrapped around her. As she set her bag on the chair, something caught her eye on the desk, a small, framed photograph. She walked closer and froze. It was Claire. Smiling, radiant, standing next to Daniel. Emily's breath hitched. The resemblance was undeniable. Same eyes, same hair, even the curve of the smile. She sank onto the bed, her chest heavy. "Is that why he brought me here? Because I look like her? Am I just a shadow of a woman he couldn't save?" Her thoughts swirled, but then, a faint noise. A floorboard creaking outside her door. Emily's body stiffened. Slowly, she approached and pressed her ear to the wood. Silence. Then, the unmistakable sound of a whisper. A man's voice. Low. Urgent. She couldn't make out the words, but she knew one thing for certain. Someone else was in the house. Emily sat frozen on the edge of the bed, her breath shallow. The whisper outside her door had stopped, leaving behind an unsettling silence that pressed in from every side. Her fingers hovered over her phone, debating whether to call Daniel. But another voice inside her head whispered louder. "What if it was him? What if he's hiding more than he's telling you?" Slowly, she slipped off the bed and padded barefoot to the door. Pressing her ear to the wood, she strained to listen. Nothing. Her heart thundered. Finally, she eased the door open, just a crack. The hallway stretched ahead, dimly lit by golden sconces. Empty. But then, a flicker of movement at the far end. A shadow. Tall. Human. Emily's breath caught. She stepped back, but her foot creaked against the floorboard. The shadow stilled. Then slowly, it disappeared around the corner. Panic shot through her veins. She pulled the door shut quickly and locked it, her back pressed hard against it. This house is supposed to be safe. Why does it feel more dangerous than my apartment? She forced herself into bed, curling beneath the covers, eyes wide open in the dark. Sleep didn't come. The next morning, sunlight poured through the tall windows. Emily woke to a soft knock on her door. "Emily." Daniel's voice. Gentle. "Breakfast is ready." Her stomach tightened. Forcing composure, she opened the door. Daniel stood there in a crisp shirt, looking perfectly calm, as though nothing had happened the night before. "Did you sleep well?" he asked. Emily forced a smile. Yeah, fine. He studied her face a moment too long, but didn't press. Come on. The staff made pancakes. You'll like them. The dining room looked like something from a magazine. Long mahogany table, silver cutlery, and plates already filled with steaming food. Daniel motioned for her to sit across from him. Emily glanced around the massive room. Don't you ever get lonely in a place this big? Daniel gave a faint smile. Sometimes. But I got used to it. He leaned forward. Maybe it doesn't have to feel so empty anymore. Her cheeks warmed, but before she could respond, the sound of a plate shattering rang out from the kitchen. Both of them turned. The housekeeper appeared quickly, bowing her head. I am sorry, sir. She bent to pick up the pieces. But Emily noticed something. The woman's hands trembled, not just from the accident, but from fear. Emily frowned. When their eyes met, the housekeeper gave the faintest shake of her head, as if warning her about something. Then she quickly disappeared again. Emily's pulse quickened. What was that? Daniel cleared his throat, steering the conversation back. Emily, I want you to trust me. No matter what happens. Her fork paused halfway to her mouth. Daniel, do you even hear yourself? You want me to trust you, but you won't explain why I need protecting. You won't tell me about the men outside, or why your housekeeper looks terrified to even breathe. You're hiding something. His jaw tightened. It's not about hiding. It's about timing. If I tell you too soon, I might lose you. Her heart ached at the rawness in his voice. But before she could answer, movement in the hallway caught her eye. A man. Strange. Dressed in black. He walked quickly past the doorway, his face partly obscured. Not a staff uniform. Not a guest Daniel had mentioned. Emily's chair scraped as she stood. Who was that? Daniel's eyes narrowed. He pushed back his chair sharply. Stay here. He disappeared into the hall. Emily's chest tightened. Seconds later, she heard voices, low, heated, urgent. Daniel's and another man's. Curiosity pulled her forward. She tiptoed to the edge of the doorway, straining to listen. The stranger's voice was muffled but clear enough. You can't keep her here. It's too dangerous. Daniel's voice, hard and sharp. I'll decide what's dangerous. Emily's stomach dropped. They were talking about me. The conversation grew too quiet to hear, but when Daniel returned moments later, the man was gone. Who was that? Emily demanded, her voice trembling. Daniel didn't answer right away. He ran a hand through his hair. Frustration etched across his face. Finally, he said, an old associate. He doesn't matter anymore. Emily stepped back, her voice rising. Doesn't matter? He just walked into your house in the middle of the morning. How am I supposed to believe you when everything screams danger? Daniel's eyes met hers, dark, intense, almost desperate. Because, Emily, the danger isn't from me. It's from the people who want me destroyed. And now, they want you too. Emily's chest tightened painfully. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to feel safe here. But the shadow in the hall, the housekeeper's trembling, the strange man's warning, it all told her something else. Maybe the real danger wasn't just outside. Maybe it was inside these walls. The morning passed in uneasy silence. Emily sat by the tall windows of her guest room, staring at the sprawling gardens outside. The mansion was beautiful, yes, but it also felt like a cage. The walls seemed too thick, the gates too high, the corridors too endless. She thought of the man in black from earlier. You can't keep her here. It's too dangerous. The words had lodged in her chest like splinters. What did he mean? Dangerous because of Daniel, or dangerous because of something else? By noon, Daniel had left for a meeting downtown. His words clipped, his kiss on her hand gentle but rushed. Stay inside. Don't wander. Please, Emily. Promise me. She nodded, But as soon as his car disappeared down the driveway, her resolve shifted. If he wouldn't tell her the truth, maybe the mansion would. Emily wandered carefully through the halls, her footsteps echoing on the polished floors. She passed room after room, libraries filled with leather-bound books, sitting rooms draped in velvet, portraits of stern men and elegant women who must have been Daniel's ancestors. It was overwhelming. This wasn't just a home. It was a legacy. A dynasty. But then, at the far end of the West Wing, she found something that caught her eye. A locked door. Unlike the others, this one was plain. No polished brass handles, no grand design, just a heavy oak door with a keypad lock. Out of place in a house full of opulence. Emily's heart pounded. What's behind there? She pressed her ear against the wood. Silence. But faintly, she caught a hum, the low mechanical sound of machines? Her curiosity surged. She tugged at the handle, but it didn't budge. Frustration burned in her chest. She turned to leave, but then noticed something on the floor nearby, a keycard. Someone must have dropped it. Her pulse raced as she picked it up. She stared at the keypad, then slid the card. The light blinked green. The door clicked. Emily pushed it open slowly, and what she saw made her breath stop. The room was dimly lit, filled with shelves and filing cabinets. At the center stood a sleek desk stacked with folders, papers, and photographs. Photographs of her. Emily's heart slammed. There were pictures of her walking to work, entering her apartment, even shopping at the corner store. Some were weeks old, others just days ago. Her knees weakened as she shuffled through them. How long had she been watched? And why were they here, in Daniel's private room? She reached for a file, flipping it open. Inside were pages with her name, her birthday, details about her life she had never told Daniel. Even her mother's hospital records. Emily's hands shook. How does he know all this? But what made her blood run cold was another file, marked with the name Claire. She hesitated, then opened it. The resemblance was undeniable. Reports, photographs, newspaper clippings about Daniel's late fiancée. And at the bottom, a police report. Cause of death, unresolved. Suspected foul play. Emily staggered back, her vision blurring. Claire hadn't just died. She'd been murdered. The hum of fear roared in Emily's ears. Suddenly, a voice cut through the silence. "What are you doing here?" Emily spun around. The housekeeper stood in the doorway, her face pale, her hands gripping her apron tightly. Emily's lips parted, but no words came. The older woman stepped closer, her voice urgent but hushed. "You shouldn't be in this room. He'll be furious if he finds out." Emily's throat was dry. "Why are there pictures of me? Files on me? Why does he know everything about my life?" The housekeeper's eyes flickered with something. Fear, pity, warning. She glanced toward the door, then leaned closer. "Because, dear, he was watching you long before you ever stepped into his car." Emily's breath caught. Her world spun. "But why?" she whispered. The woman shook her head quickly. "I can't say. It's not safe, for either of us. But listen to me." She grasped Emily's trembling hands. "You must be careful. Things aren't what they seem. And Daniel." A sudden noise echoed in the hallway. The sound of footsteps. Heavy. Approaching. The housekeeper's face drained of color. She released Emily's hands, backing toward the shelves. "Go. Now. Pretend you were never here." Emily's heart pounded as she shoved the files back, wiped her tears, and slipped out of the room just as the footsteps drew closer. She hurried down the hall, nearly tripping on the rug, her breath ragged. When she reached her guest room, she collapsed against the door, shaking violently. Her mind screamed with questions, but one echoed louder than the rest. Was Daniel protecting her? Or had she just stepped into the arms of the very man she should fear most? Emily spent the afternoon in her room, pacing, her hands trembling. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw those photographs. Images of herself, walking to work, buying groceries, even the day she cried outside the hospital after visiting her mom. Daniel had known her long before she thought she had met him. The door to her room creaked open. Daniel stepped in, his tie loosened, his expression weary. "Emily, are you all right? You've been in here all day." Her heart pounded, anger bubbling beneath her ribs. "Why don't you tell me, Daniel? Am I all right? Or am I just a replacement?" He froze, his brows knitting. "What are you talking about?" Emily's voice cracked. "I saw the files. The photos. You've been watching me for months. You knew everything about me before I even knew your name." Daniel's jaw tightened. His gaze flicked toward the floor as though he already knew she would find out someday. He closed the door quietly, locking it behind him. "Yes," he admitted, his voice low. "I knew you." Emily's chest caved. The truth hit harder than she expected. "Why? Why me?" He took a step closer, but she backed away, pressing herself against the dresser. "Don't. Just tell me the truth, Daniel. No more secrets." Daniel's face softened, pain clouding his eyes. "Because you reminded me of her. Claire." His voice broke slightly on the name. "The first time I saw you, I thought I was seeing a ghost. But then I realized you weren't her. You were, you. Someone stronger. Someone who carried her own storms but still kept walking." Emily's eyes burned with tears. "So what, Daniel? I was just some project for you? A distraction from the woman you couldn't save?" "No." He stepped forward, desperate now. "Don't you dare think that. At first, maybe I didn't understand what drew me to you. But Emily." His voice softened, raw and aching. "Somewhere along the way, it stopped being about her. It became about you." Her breath caught, her body trembling. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to, but the fear of being used was stronger. Emily whispered, "And Claire? She didn't just die, did she?" Daniel's face darkened, a storm crossing his features. He looked away, his voice rough. "No. She was taken from me. Killed. And I still don't know who was behind it. That's why you're in danger, Emily. Whoever went after her. They've started watching you." Her stomach dropped. "Because I look like her?" Daniel's silence was the only answer she needed. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She sank onto the bed, her voice cracking. "So I was never safe with you. I was just another target." Daniel knelt in front of her, his hand hovering as if afraid to touch. "No, Emily. You were my second chance. My reason to fight again. I can't lose you the way I lost Claire." His words pierced her heart, stirring something deep and dangerous inside her. She wanted to push him away, but when his hand finally brushed against hers, warmth spread through her chest. Her voice trembled. "How can I trust you?" Daniel's gaze locked with hers, steady and unflinching. "Because I'll prove it. Whatever it takes. Even if it means telling you things I swore I'd bury forever." Before Emily could answer, a sharp noise echoed outside the window. Both of them froze. Daniel moved quickly, drawing the curtains. The shadow of a man slipped across the garden, then vanished into the trees. Emily's blood turned cold. Daniel grabbed his phone, his voice sharp and commanding as he barked orders to someone on the other end. "Security. Patrol. Lockdown." When he hung up, his eyes burned into hers. "You see now, Emily? It's not just paranoia. They're here. Watching. Waiting." Emily's hands trembled. "Then maybe I should leave. Maybe I should go far away from you before it's too late." Daniel's face twisted in anguish. "If you leave now, they'll find you in a heartbeat. If you stay, at least I can fight for you." Her throat tightened. She had never felt so trapped, between fear of him and fear without him. Daniel's voice dropped to a near whisper, desperate and raw. "Please, Emily. Stay. Not because of the danger, but because you want to." Emily opened her mouth, but before she could speak, the sound of shattering glass ripped through the mansion. Both of them shot to their feet. Somewhere downstairs, someone had broken in. The sound of glass shattering echoed like a gunshot through the mansion. Emily's entire body froze, her pulse hammering so loudly she could barely hear her own thoughts. Daniel moved instantly, his protective instincts kicking in. He grabbed her hand firmly. "Stay behind me." Emily's throat went dry. "Daniel, what if?" "Don't think," he cut in sharply. His eyes were hard, determined. "Just trust me." He pulled her toward the hallway, his pace quick but silent. Every chandelier above them swayed slightly from the vibrations of the impact below. When they reached the grand staircase, Daniel halted, pressing Emily gently against the wall. He listened, his head tilted toward the sounds drifting upward. Heavy footsteps. More than one. Emily's chest squeezed painfully. "Daniel, there's more than one." His jaw clenched. "Stay quiet." From his jacket, he pulled a sleek black pistol, the metal glinting under the dim light. Emily gasped softly. You have a gun?" His eyes flickered to hers briefly. "I have enemies, Emily. I always have." The footsteps grew louder. Voices now, low, commanding, foreign. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone was unmistakable. Dangerous. Daniel's grip on her hand tightened. "We need to move." He led her quickly down a side corridor, away from the staircase. The mansion seemed like a labyrinth now, endless doors and shadowed passages. At the far end, he pushed open a hidden panel in the wall, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling downward. Emily's eyes widened. "What is this?" "A safe route," Daniel said. "It leads to the lower wing. Go." She hesitated, fear battling curiosity. "And you?" "I'll distract them. Buy us time." Her heart lurched. "No. I'm not leaving you two." Daniel cupped her face suddenly, his voice low and urgent. "Emily, look at me. I promised I wouldn't lose you. You need to survive this. Go." Tears stung her eyes as he pushed her gently toward the stairs. She had barely descended a few steps when the crash of a door bursting open echoed through the hall above. Men shouted. Daniel spun around, raising his weapon. Emily froze, torn between obeying and staying. Then it happened. Gunfire. The deafening sound ricocheted through the mansion. Emily's scream caught in her throat as she covered her ears, her body shaking violently. She risked a glance through the crack in the wall. Shadows moved swiftly, men in dark clothing flooding the hall. Daniel fired back, his movements sharp, precise, like a man who had done this many times before. Emily's heart twisted. Who was he really? "Find the girl," one of the intruders barked. Emily's blood turned to ice. "They're here for me." Fear surged through her veins. She stumbled down the staircase, tears blurring her vision. Every creak of the wood felt like it would give her away. The stairs led to a dark corridor beneath the mansion, lined with old wine racks and stone walls. Emily pressed herself against the cold surface, trembling. Above her, the chaos continued. Shouts, footsteps, the sharp cracks of gunfire. She bit her lip to stifle her sobs. Then, footsteps echoed in her corridor. Slow. Searching. Emily's heart pounded so hard she thought it would betray her. She darted into a narrow storage alcove, pressing herself behind stacked crates. A flashlight beam swept across the corridor. Heavy boots crunched against the stone floor. "Check down here," a voice barked. Emily clamped her hands over her mouth, tears spilling silently. She could see the shadow of the intruder just feet away, the light grazing the crates she hid behind. Seconds stretched into eternity. Then, Daniel's voice, sharp and furious, from above. "Over here." The intruder cursed and turned back, his boots pounding away. Emily gasped for air, her whole body shaking with relief. Daniel had drawn them off her trail. But her relief was short-lived. Because as she slowly crept out of the alcove, she realized something chilling. Another shadow stood at the far end of the corridor, tall, motionless, watching her. Emily's blood froze. The man stepped forward slowly, his face still hidden in the dim light. Unlike the others, he didn't move with violence. His voice, when it came, was calm, almost gentle. You shouldn't trust him. Emily's breath caught. What? The man tilted his head. Daniel. He's not who you think he is. He didn't tell you the whole truth about Claire. Or about why you're here. Emily's knees weakened. Who are you? He took another step, just close enough for the light to catch his features. Sharp eyes, a scar across his cheek. I'm the one who tried to warn you. That night. Outside your apartment. Her heart pounded violently. It was the hooded man. Emily's back pressed against the cold stone wall as the hooded man stepped closer. His scarred face emerged from the shadows, sharp eyes studying her every move. You don't belong here, he whispered. Daniel isn't who you think he is. Her heart thundered painfully. You're the one who was outside my apartment. Yes. His voice was steady. I've been trying to keep you alive. Emily's stomach twisted. Alive? From who? The man's gaze hardened. From him. Daniel Reed. Emily shook her head, tears blurring her vision. No, you're wrong. He saved me tonight. He protected me. The man stepped closer, his tone sharp now. Protected you? Or trapped you? Didn't you ask yourself why he had files on you long before you even met him? Why he's kept you locked in this mansion, away from the world? Emily flinched. The words cut deep because they echoed her own fears. Why? She whispered. Why would he do that? The man's eyes softened with pity. Because you remind him of Claire, the woman who died in his care. He couldn't save her, so now he's trying to replace her, with you. Emily's breath caught. The sting of truth was unbearable. She had seen Claire's photos. She had felt the weight of Daniel's confession. But hearing it from a stranger made it all the more real. Still, part of her heart fought back. You're lying. You're trying to turn me against him. The man leaned in closer, his voice lowering. Then ask yourself this. Why was Claire's death marked as foul play? And why was Daniel the last person to see her alive? Emily's blood ran cold. Her lips trembled. How do you know that? Because I was there that night, he said firmly. And I saw everything. Her knees nearly buckled. Was Daniel responsible? Before she could speak, the sound of footsteps echoed above them. Daniel's voice roared through the halls. Emily! Emily, where are you? Relief and fear tangled in her chest. The man grabbed her wrist, urgent now. If you go back to him, you'll never know the truth. Come with me. I'll show you what really happened to Claire. Emily's breath hitched. Leave. With you. Yes. Right now, before he finds us. His grip tightened. It's your only chance. Her mind spun violently. Daniel's warmth, his desperate promise to protect her, the tenderness in his eyes. It all collided with the cold evidence she'd seen in that locked room, and the stranger's words tearing through her heart. Who was lying? Who was telling the truth? Above them, Daniel's footsteps grew louder. Closer. His voice, desperate now. Emily. Don't listen to anyone else. Where are you? Emily's chest constricted, her tears falling freely. The hooded man pulled her toward the side corridor. Choose, he whispered. Me, or him. Right now. Her body froze between two paths. Her heart split in two. And then, Daniel appeared at the top of the staircase, his gun still in hand, his eyes locking instantly onto Emily. Emily, he said, his voice low, trembling with fear and fury. Step away from him. Now. The hooded man pulled her closer, his arm protectively across her shoulders. Don't listen to him. He'll only break you like he broke Claire. Daniel's jaw tightened, his voice shaking with restrained emotion. "Emily, please. Don't believe him. He's the reason Claire is dead." Emily's world shattered. Both men stood before her, each claiming the other was the monster. Her heart pounded so violently she thought it might burst. The underground corridor trembled with tension as the storm of silence hung between them. Daniel stood at the top of the staircase, his gun raised, his dark eyes locked on Emily. His usually calm demeanor cracked. Fury and fear battled across his face. "Emily," he said, voice low, urgent, almost breaking. "Step away from him. Come to me." The hooded man pulled her closer, his arm protective across her shoulders. She could feel his heart pounding against her back, the heat of his anger radiating through his grip. "Don't," the hooded man whispered in her ear. "If you step toward him, you won't survive. I know what he's capable of." Emily's chest tightened, her breath shallow and uneven. "Please, stop. Both of you." Her voice trembled. "I don't know who to believe." Daniel's face twisted in pain at her words. His gun lowered slightly. "Emily, I've never lied to you. Everything I've done was to protect you. This man, he's dangerous. He's the reason Claire is gone." The hooded man's voice thundered through the stone corridor. "Liar. You drove her to her death. And now you're trying to use Emily the same way." Emily covered her ears. "Stop. Just stop." But neither of them did. In one sharp motion, the hooded man pulled a knife from his belt, the blade gleaming under the flickering lights. Daniel immediately aimed his gun at his chest. "Let her go," Daniel growled, every syllable dripping with rage. "Or I swear. Or you'll kill me too," the hooded man shot back. "Like you killed her?" Daniel's hand trembled slightly, but his eyes never left Emily's face. "I would never hurt her. Emily, you know that. Look at me." Her tear-filled eyes locked with his, and for a fleeting second, the world disappeared. She saw the Daniel who brought her safety, warmth, and moments of fragile peace. But then the man's grip on her shoulder tightened, snapping her back to reality. "Don't be fooled by his charm," the hooded man hissed. "Claire trusted that same smile. And it cost her life." Daniel's jaw clenched so tightly the vein in his temple pulsed. "You killed her. Don't you dare twist this on me." The hooded man let out a bitter laugh. "Say that enough times, Daniel, and maybe you'll believe it yourself." The tension snapped. With terrifying speed, Daniel fired a shot, not at the man's chest, but at the knife, knocking it clean out of his hand. The blade clattered to the floor, sparks flying across the stone. Emily screamed, her knees buckling at the deafening crack. The hooded man shoved Emily aside and lunged at Daniel, his fists colliding with him before Daniel could steady his aim. The gun slipped from Daniel's hand, sliding across the floor. "Daniel!" Emily cried, but her voice was swallowed by the chaos. The two men clashed violently, fists and fury echoing in the confined space. Daniel's training showed in his precise, controlled strikes, but the hooded man fought with raw, desperate strength, each blow fueled by years of rage. Emily scrambled backward, her hands over her mouth as she watched the two men who claimed to protect her trying to destroy each other. "You'll never have her," the hooded man roared, slamming Daniel against the wall. Daniel grunted, shoving him off with brutal force. "She's not yours to save." They crashed into crates, splintering wood and scattering bottles across the floor. The sound was deafening, glass shattering like broken promises. Emily's eyes darted frantically. The gun lay just feet away. Trembling, she crawled toward it, every inch feeling like miles. Her fingers brushed the cold metal. But the hooded man saw. He lunged, slamming his boot down on the gun before she could grab it. Emily gasped, frozen in fear. Daniel's eyes widened. "Emily, don't touch it." The hooded man smirked darkly, grabbing the weapon. He pressed it against Daniel's chest. "You don't get to decide anymore, Reed," he spat. Emily's scream echoed through the hall. "No, please. Don't." But the hooded man's finger tightened on the trigger. Daniel's eyes locked on Emily's. His voice was calm, steady, even as the gun pressed against him. Emily, no matter what happens, remember I never stopped fighting for you. Her tears blurred everything, her heart tearing apart at the sight. And then, bang! The gun fired. Smoke filled the air. Someone collapsed to the ground. Emily's scream echoed through the cold stone as she stumbled forward, unable to see who had fallen. The echo of the gunshot still rattled inside Emily's skull. Smoke lingered in the cold air, wrapping the underground corridor in a suffocating haze. For a moment, the world was silent. Too silent. Then, a body crumpled to the ground. Emily's legs buckled beneath her as she stumbled forward, her breath ragged, tears blinding her vision. No, no, please no. Through the haze, she saw him, Daniel. He was on one knee, clutching his side, his shirt blooming red with blood. The gun clattered away across the floor. Daniel! Emily's scream cracked like glass as she rushed to him, falling to her knees. Her hands pressed against the wound instinctively, her fingers slick with his blood. His face was pale, his jaw clenched, but his eyes, those dark, unshakable eyes, stayed on her. Emily! Don't cry. His voice was low, strained with pain. The hooded man stood a few feet away, breathing heavily, shock flickering across his scarred face. For a second, it seemed as if he hadn't expected the shot to hit where it did. Emily turned on him, fury blazing through her fear. What have you done? He flinched, but his voice was steady. He would have killed you eventually. You don't understand. Her scream cut him off. No. You don't understand. He saved me. He. Daniel grunted, trying to push himself upright. His voice, weak but laced with defiance, interrupted. Don't believe him, Emily. The hooded man's jaw tightened. He's lying even now. You think he cares about you? Ask him about Claire. Ask him how she died. Emily's heart twisted painfully. She looked down at Daniel, blood seeping through her trembling fingers, and whispered, "Tell me the truth, please." Daniel's lips parted, his breathing shallow. For a moment, she thought he would finally confess everything. But instead, he gripped her wrist with surprising strength, his eyes burning into hers. "Trust me," he whispered. "That's all I ask." Emily's tears spilled freely. "How can I? When everything is broken?" Before either man could speak again, shouts erupted from above. Daniel's private security, finally alerted to the chaos. Heavy boots thundered down the mansion stairs. The hooded man's eyes widened. He took a step back. "They'll kill me if I stay," he muttered. His gaze flicked once more to Emily. "Don't let him poison you like he did Claire." And then he vanished into the shadows, slipping through a side passage just as the guards stormed in. "Sir!" one shouted, rushing to Daniel. "We need to get him to the hospital, now." Emily clung to Daniel's hand as they lifted him, her sobs breaking uncontrollably. "Don't leave me, Daniel. Please, don't leave me." His eyes closed for a second, his breathing ragged, but his lips moved faintly. "I won't, not yet." The next hours blurred for Emily. Sirens. Blinding hospital lights. The smell of antiseptic burning her nose. She sat in the waiting room, her hands still stained with his blood, her whole body trembling. Every passing second felt like an eternity. Her mind replayed everything. The hooded man's warnings, Daniel's refusal to explain, the look in his eyes as he bled in her arms. Finally, a doctor approached, his expression grave. Emily leapt to her feet. Is he alive?" The doctor nodded slowly. "He's stable. The bullet missed anything vital, but he lost a lot of blood. He'll need rest, and someone he trusts by his side." Emily's chest tightened. Someone he trusts. But did she still trust him? The doctor gestured for her to follow. Her heart pounded as she walked into the recovery room. Daniel lay pale against the white sheets, wires and machines beeping steadily around him. His eyes were closed, but when she whispered his name, they fluttered open. Emily. His voice was barely audible, yet the relief in it was undeniable. Tears filled her eyes again. She sat at his side, clutching his hand. You scared me half to death. He gave the faintest of smiles. Not my intention. Her tears slipped down her cheeks. Daniel, I can't keep living like this. I don't know who to believe anymore. Him, or you. Please. I need the truth. His hand tightened weakly around hers. His lips parted, his eyes shimmering with a pain deeper than the wound in his body. And then he whispered, barely audible. The truth about Claire. It's worse than you think. The hospital room hummed with a soft, steady rhythm, the beeping of machines, the low whir of oxygen. But for Emily, it felt like every sound was an echo of her own racing heartbeat. She sat on the edge of Daniel's bed, her trembling hands wrapped tightly around his. His skin was cool, his face pale from the blood he had lost, but his eyes, oh, those eyes, were still alive with something fierce. She whispered, her voice breaking, Daniel, I can't keep living in this shadow. I need to know. Who was Claire to you? What happened to her? Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, his chest rising and falling heavily. He looked as though he had spent years carrying the weight of this question, and now it was finally crushing him. When he opened his eyes again, they glistened with something raw. Claire, he began, his voice hoarse, was everything to me. Emily's breath hitched. She wasn't just someone I cared for. She was the woman I was supposed to marry. Emily's chest tightened. It was as though the air had been sucked from the room. Mary. Daniel looked away, shame flickering across his face. We were engaged. I thought she was my forever. But forever, his voice broke, wasn't promised to me. Tears burned Emily's eyes. She had known there was a connection, but hearing this truth shattered something inside her. Daniel continued, his tone heavier now. The night she died, we argued. She wanted freedom, a life outside my control. I thought I was protecting her from the enemies circling me. But she saw it differently. She said I was suffocating her. His jaw clenched, his gaze dropping to his trembling hands. She left the house that night, got into her car, drove away. I chased after her, trying to stop her. But his voice cracked. His throat tightened with agony. Her car was forced off the road. They said it was an accident. But I knew better. She was targeted, because of me. Emily's tears flowed freely now. Her heart ached for his pain, for the broken man before her. But the shadow of doubt gnawed at her still. She whispered, but the hooded man, he said you were the reason she died. That you. Daniel's head snapped toward her, his eyes blazing with anguish. Emily, no. I wasn't the one who killed her. But I blame myself every single day because I couldn't save her. His voice dropped to a trembling whisper. You don't know what it feels like to watch the person you love more than life itself slip through your fingers, knowing it's your fault. Emily's chest heaved with sobs. She reached for his hand, squeezing it tightly, her heart torn in two. But why didn't you tell me? Why keep it all hidden? Why let me find out this way? Daniel's eyes softened, tears finally spilling down his cheeks. Because when I saw you, Emily, I felt something I thought I'd buried with Claire. I didn't want my past to stain what we had. I didn't want you to see me as the broken man who failed her. Emily's lips trembled. And yet, I remind you of her. Daniel flinched as though her words had struck him harder than the bullet. His voice cracked. Yes. At first, you did. But now, Emily. He reached weakly toward her cheek, his touch trembling. Now, when I see you, I see only you. You're not my second chance at Claire. You're my only chance at something real again. Emily's tears spilled faster, her heart torn between the sincerity in his words and the memory of the hooded man's warning. Her voice shook. But if you didn't kill Claire, then who did? Who's been haunting us all this time? Daniel's jaw tightened, his eyes hardening with a fury she hadn't seen in him before. I know who it was, he said, his voice cold now. And he won't stop until he destroys everything I care about. Including you. Emily's breath caught, fear clawing at her chest. Who? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Daniel's gaze locked on hers, his next words heavy and terrifying. It was the man you've been listening to. The one who calls himself your savior. Emily froze, her mind spinning violently. Daniel's hand tightened around hers, his voice trembling with both desperation and warning. The hooded man killed Claire. Her heart slammed against her ribs. The room spun around her. One of them was lying. One of them was a killer. The hospital corridors were quiet, almost too quiet. Emily sat alone in the waiting area, the fluorescent lights buzzing faintly above her. Daniel had fallen asleep after the medication dulled his pain, but her heart was anything but calm. His confession replayed in her mind like a broken record. Claire was the woman I was supposed to marry. I didn't kill her. The hooded man did. Her hands trembled in her lap. Tears threatened again, but before they could fall, a shadow flickered across the hallway wall. Emily stiffened. The hooded man stepped out from behind the corner, his face no longer fully hidden. The scar across his cheek looked darker under the harsh lights, his eyes sharp, but not unkind. Emily jumped to her feet, her chest heaving. You! How did you get in here? He raised his hands calmly. Relax. I'm not here to hurt you. Her heart hammered. You already did. Daniel almost died because of you. The hooded man's jaw tightened. That wasn't supposed to happen. He wasn't meant to take the bullet. Emily's hands curled into fists. Then who was? His silence was the only answer she needed. Her voice cracked with fury. Me. He finally looked at her, his voice low, almost regretful. They were going to kill you anyway. I wanted to stop him before he dragged you further into his darkness. Emily shook her head violently. You're lying. He said you killed Claire. The man flinched, his eyes flashing with pain. Of course he did. Daniel Reed never takes responsibility for the blood on his hands. He twists the truth until it shines like glass, until people like you can't see the cracks underneath. Emily's knees weakened. Tell me then. If you're not lying, tell me what really happened to Claire. The hooded man inhaled sharply, his voice rough as though dragging the memory from somewhere buried deep. Claire was desperate to leave him. She told me herself. I was her brother's closest friend. She came to me for help. She said Daniel was controlling every part of her life, who she saw, where she went, what she did. She wanted freedom. Emily's chest constricted. She had heard something similar from Daniel, but the angles were so different that her mind spun. The man continued, his tone sharper now. That night, she called me in tears. She was running. She said Daniel wouldn't let her go. I told her to meet me. But she never made it. Her car was forced off the road. By him. Emily's lips trembled. No. Daniel said he chased after her to stop her from leaving. He said it wasn't him. The hooded man stepped closer, his eyes burning with urgency. Think, Emily. Who else had the resources to stage it as an accident? Who had the power to bury the investigation? Daniel Reed did. And he did it to protect himself. Emily's body shook violently. If that's true, why are you here now? Why risk everything to warn me? His voice softened. Because I couldn't save Claire. And when I saw you, I saw her ghost in your eyes. I swore I wouldn't let history repeat itself. Her tears finally spilled, streaming down her cheeks. So why didn't you just tell me sooner? Why sneak around? Why hide in shadows? Because Daniel would have killed me before you ever heard the truth, he said simply. Emily turned away, her mind unraveling, every word from Daniel and every word from this man crashing violently against each other. Who was telling the truth? Who was the monster? The hooded man stepped closer, his voice trembling now. Emily, you don't have to decide tonight. But remember this, Daniel's love feels like safety at first. Until you realize it's a cage. Emily's heart pounded painfully. Suddenly, behind them, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the corridor. Daniel's guards. The hooded man grabbed Emily's hand gently but firmly. They'll find me. I have to go. But think about what I said. Think about Claire. And before she could respond, he disappeared through a side door, swallowed by the darkness once more. Emily sank back into her chair, her body trembling violently. Her tears wouldn't stop. Both men claimed to love. Both men claimed to protect. Both men claimed the other was a killer. And now, she was trapped between them. The hospital room was dim, the only light coming from the monitors that beeped softly beside Daniel's bed. Emily sat in the chair beside him, her arms wrapped tightly around herself as if holding in the storm raging inside her. She hadn't slept. Not a minute. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw them both, Daniel's bleeding body in her arms, and the hooded man's burning eyes as he whispered, "Daniel killed Claire." Now she couldn't breathe unless she knew the truth. Daniel stirred, groaning softly as he blinked awake. His gaze found her instantly, and a faint, fragile smile touched his lips. Emily. Her heart twisted at the sound of her name. But instead of melting into him, she stood, her voice sharper than before. We need to talk. Daniel frowned, trying to push himself upright. Pain flickered across his features. About what? She stepped closer, her eyes red but unflinching. Claire. Silence fell heavy between them. Daniel's face darkened, his jaw tightening. I already told you. Emily cut him off, her voice cracking. No. You told me your version. He told me his. Daniel's eyes flashed. He found you. Emily's chest heaved, but she stood her ground. Yes. And I listened. Because you never gave me the full truth. You kept me in the dark, Daniel. You let me find out in pieces like I didn't deserve to know at all. His hand clenched the bedsheet. Emily, I was protecting you. Her tears spilled, but her voice rose. Protecting me, or controlling me. Just like you did with her. Daniel's face went pale, his lips parting as though she'd slapped him. That's not true. Then tell me. Emily cried. The night Claire died, you said you chased after her when she left the house. But he told me she called him. That she begged him for help. So tell me, Daniel, were you with her that night? Or were you not? Daniel's throat worked, his eyes shifting for just a second, 1 second too long. Emily's chest caved in. That hesitation was all she needed. You lied. Her voice broke into a whisper, her knees almost giving way. Oh God, you lied to me. Daniel reached for her desperately, his face stricken. Emily, no, please. It's not what you think. She stumbled back, shaking her head violently, sobs tearing through her chest. Then what is it, Daniel? Tell me what I'm supposed to think when every answer from you is half a truth. His voice cracked, louder now, his control slipping. I didn't want you to see the worst of me. I didn't want you to leave like she did. Emily froze. His words struck her harder than any bullet. You kept me here, she whispered, her voice trembling. Not because you wanted to protect me, but because you were afraid I'd walk away too. Daniel's face crumbled, his shoulders sagging. Emily, please, you're all I have left. Her tears blurred everything. She wanted to believe him, to fall into his arms and forget. But the shadow of Claire's death loomed larger than ever, and the lie she had just caught ripped through her like fire. Suddenly, the door opened. One of Daniel's security guards stepped inside, his expression tense. Sir, we've got a situation. Daniel's gaze snapped up. What now? The guard's eyes flickered to Emily nervously before he spoke. The man who broke in, he was spotted again. Near the hospital. Emily's blood froze. Daniel's face hardened with rage. Then finish it. Tonight. I don't care what it takes. Emily's stomach dropped. His words weren't just orders, they were vengeance. She stepped back, her voice trembling. Finish it. Daniel, what does that mean? He looked at her, his expression unreadable, his silence screaming louder than words. Emily's heart shattered. The man she thought was her savior might be her captor after all. The night outside the hospital was heavy with fog, the kind that swallowed every streetlight and made the world feel like it was holding its breath. Emily stood by the window of Daniel's room, her heart in chaos, her mind torn into pieces. Daniel lay in the bed behind her, his face pale but his eyes watching her like a man desperate to hold on to something already slipping through his fingers. And then, she heard it. The muffled crash of footsteps. A shout. The alarm of a guard down the hallway. Emily spun around just as the door burst open. The hooded man. This time, he didn't sneak or hide. He stormed in, his eyes blazing, his voice trembling with fury. Enough hiding, Daniel. Tonight, the truth comes out. Daniel pushed himself up, wincing from his wounds but glaring with pure hatred. You don't belong here. The hooded man ripped off his hood, his scarred face finally visible in full. Emily gasped, not out of fear, but shock. His eyes were filled with pain, with grief. My name, he said, his voice rough but steady, is Michael Hayes. Claire was my sister. Emily's world tilted. Her knees nearly buckled. Daniel's expression darkened, his voice laced with venom. You should have stayed buried in the past, Michael. Michael stepped closer, his fists shaking. You destroyed my family. You controlled her until she couldn't breathe. And when she tried to escape you, you chased her into the night like a predator. You think I don't know? She called me. I heard her screams. Emily clutched her chest, her sobs breaking free. She turned to Daniel, desperate, pleading. Tell me it's not true. Please, Daniel, tell me. Daniel's eyes locked on hers, his voice breaking. Emily, listen to me. Claire was fragile. She was running away from me, yes, but not because I hurt her. Because she was sick. Because she was afraid of herself. I chased after her to bring her home. To save her. But the accident wasn't me. It was her. She lost control of the car. Michael's voice thundered. Liar. The police files, the ones your money buried, showed tire marks. Another car was forcing hers off the road. And I know it was yours. Daniel's jaw clenched, his silence louder than denial. Emily's chest caved in. Two men. Two truths. Both swearing on the same love for the same woman. Her voice trembled. Why didn't you ever tell me, Daniel? Why did you hide this until I had to hear it from him? Daniel's face softened, his eyes wet with unshed tears. Because I knew the truth would ruin us. Because I couldn't stand the thought of you looking at me like you are right now. Like I'm a monster. Michael's voice cracked too, his anger giving way to sorrow. And I couldn't stand watching him cage you the way he caged her. I had to risk everything to save you, Emily. Because I already lost my sister. Emily staggered back, her hands trembling violently. She looked at one man, then the other, her heart splitting in two. Daniel, the man who had saved her on a cold night, who had given her warmth, who claimed to love her more than life itself. Michael, the broken brother who carried truth like a wound, who saw Claire in her eyes, who only wanted to stop history from repeating itself. Her tears fell harder than ever. I don't know who to believe. Daniel reached for her, his voice hoarse. Believe your heart, Emily. You know me. You've seen me. I've never hurt you. Michael's voice cut through, desperate. And you've seen him lie. You've felt the cage he built around you. Don't make the same mistake Claire did. The air was suffocating. Emily's breath came in shallow gasps. Every choice burned. Every truth cut deep. And then, the sound of sirens wailed outside the hospital. Police. Someone had called them. Both men turned toward the window, tense. They didn't have much time. Emily's sobs quieted into a fragile whisper. If I choose wrong, I lose everything. Silence. Daniel's hand trembled as he held it out to her. Emily, come with me. We'll leave all this behind. Just us. Michael's eyes glistened as he reached his hand out too. Emily, trust me. Let me protect you the way I couldn't protect Claire. The world narrowed to their faces, their hands, her breaking heart.